Hello, good morning, and welcome. I'm hopefully your favorite host on WESN, Sule A. Joseph, a counseling psychologist by profession, and welcome to Psyched. On today's episode, we have a controversial topic to discuss, but before we get into that, of course, my favorite segment, Psyched to Know.
Psyched to Know, brought to you by Sule Joseph and Associates.
TNT's Equal Opportunity Act prohibits discrimination based on the qualities of the victim, such as race, but does not define the qualities of the perpetrator. This means that any potential same-race discrimination could still be illegal, just as much as racial discrimination by someone of a different race.
Rise to the occasion with Cocky Lucky, exclusively sold at the Big Mike Wellness Center.
Number 19 Market Street in Aruka. Contact 346-26 or 338-7775.
The Guide family has been serving TNT for over 80 years. JE Guide Funeral Home and Crematorium, 2 locations, San Fernando and Princestown. When you need land, a home, or investment property, step-by-step property consultancy and management can help you. Call Step by Step today, 750-4442.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, and of course you're tuning in to Psyched. Now, I promised a controversial conversation this morning, and that is what you're going to get. Now, sometime last week, there was a meeting of local government in Sandy Grande, and one of the aldermen from the UNC, Ms. Susan Holder, if I have that name correctly, would have made a controversial statement. She would have been commenting on the behavior of the councillors from the PNM, and she used what was termed as a derogatory racial slur. She referred to the behavior as old N-word behavior. Let's use the word ninja, old ninja behavior, right? She used the words old ninja behavior, and persons became immediately infuriated, immediately upset, and called for her head. Well, today we want to take a look at that. We want to take a look at the history of the N-word, the ninja word. Where did it come from? Why is it offensive? And have a conversation about, should we be offended as a people? Joining me to have that conversation today is our favorite what do you call it, ethnic or race relations specialist? Right now, the race relations specialist, Mr. Jude Campbell.
Yes, not Bellingham.
Mr. Jude Campbell, podcaster, right?
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for joining us, Jude.
No problem. And I've never been described as a race relations specialist before, so thank you for that.
The race relations
But I'm glad
specialist.
to be here.
Good to have you. Excellent to have you. Now, For those persons at home who don't know, at least the written history, the way they have it, for the origination of the N-word, right? Of course, as a description for persons of black color or persuasion, Afro-oriented persons,
yes,
right? So persons around the diaspora who would have originated from Africa, right? Or have connections to Africa ethnically.
Right.
The word would have originated from Latin, from a Latin word, meaning black originally.
Right.
And at least they said originally it was not intended to be offensive. But of course, through slavery and this whole slave movement and so on that the African diaspora would have had to endure and go through, it then became a very derogatory word. It was a word used to belittle and demean and to oppress a people, and very synonymous with slavery.
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, we've had a movement of black persons trying to reclaim the word as a positive word.
Right. Okay.
And referring to each other by using the ninja word, right?
Largely in North America, to be fair.
Right, yeah. It's largely a Western North American cultural thing. But the argument is that it empowers you by claiming back the word and so on, and you say.
And pronouncing it differently.
A slight deviation. It's an error. It's an error. The error makes it aggressive and racist. But the R makes it more palatable, apparently.
Apparently,
It erases the history of it, yes. Okay, so we have all of that. We understand all of that history.
Yes.
I have a question. My first question to you would be, is this N-word, ninja, the ninja word, is this ninja word, is it more offensive than, let's say, negative words you use to describe East Indians or Chinese or Spanish persons or...
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask people from those ethnicities how they feel about terms that are used to describe them in a derogatory manner. For me personally, I don't get offended when I hear the word itself, right? Almost like almost anything else, it would depend on the context and what I perceive to be the intention of the person saying it to me.
Right.
So I listen to rap music all the time. So if I was offended by the word, I couldn't listen to rap music. I'd have to take it off or only listen to the censored version. So obviously hearing the word itself, it does not necessarily stir up a reaction in me. And also, to be fair, I lived in England for a little while, and I had to deal with people using the word towards me in a not so friendly manner. And I learned to not allow it to evoke an emotional response from me. So me personally, I am not offended when I hear the word. I can't speak, obviously, for anybody else.
Right.
You know? So that's how I feel. And with respect to other words, I would imagine that people of those ethnicities couldn't care less about how we feel about the N-word. They would be very, very upset. In other words, you're asking me as if, if to them that word is worse than words used to insult them. Yeah. I don't think they would have any opinion on that, really. It was whatever is used to describe them or insult them, it would be offensive to them.
Now, an example would be, there are words that are used to describe Jewish persons that, as far as I know, or that has been made publicly, that they are very much against. Usually once you use...
The key word is the biggest one, yes.
Right? So once you use any of those words, automatically they call you anti-Semite. Usually they come down very strongly against that.
Yes.
Really strongly against it. So then there are some communities and some groups that are really against negative words that they use to describe them.
Right. Because it's meant to insult. So
correct. It is meant to insult me. So to bring this home, bring it back to the Sangre Grande Corporation and the conversation that was had. Yeah. I struggle to find a positive way that the word old ninja, right?
Yes.
That old ninja word. I struggle to find a positive way that old ninja word could have been used to describe something and not be used to wound, hurt, or be, to intend pain or describe something in a very negative manner.
Now, we were having this discussion off air, right? And the sentiment I expressed to you is that I personally find it difficult to believe that anybody is truly offended when they heard about this, right? Because that term, that old ninja term as you call it, is something that has been, used widely amongst Afro-Trinbagonians, right? I have heard that term probably hundreds of thousands of times, right? Or maybe that's an exaggeration, but quite a lot. And I've actually never heard it used by somebody of another race, right? Now, I'm not saying that they don't. I'm simply saying that my familiarity with the term, when people refer to, when I've heard the behavior described as old ninja behavior, I've never heard that come from anybody outside of the Afro-Trinbagonian community. So I think it is something that we all, as a community, understand. I'm not justifying it. I'm simply saying that we ourselves use that term to describe, and the other races do that as well. Other races have terms that they use to describe what they might call riffraff, the riffraff of their own kind. As I said, I lived in the UK. I don't want to use that word. I'm not sure if I could use that word on here. So there's a term that white people use to refer to what they would call white riffraff or white riffraff behavior. In the States, they would use terms like white trash or trailer park or whatever. So I think that is something that we culturally do, that all races probably have in some way, a way to describe undesirable behavior when displayed by their kind, right? And that term is one that has been widely used. Now, the people who could be offended would be the people whose behavior she was describing. And they're not offended because of the racial connotation. They're offended because she's insulting them directly. But I don't know that I would really tolerate any conversation from an African telling me, well, boy, now, when I heard that, I had to clutch my pearls. It was just so...
But then it begs this question. It begs a particular question then, because the argument then lends, or it begs the question, and I'm certain persons at home, you at home, might be asking yourself the same question. Can you be racist towards your own race? Or can you make statements that can be construed as racist or biased or discriminatory against yourself or your own race?
Or racially insensitive, yes.
Correct. And the answer to that is yes.
Of course,
that's a basic answer, yes.
Of course you
can. So then if that can be the case, then it can still be that a statement was made, especially in the time and space that it was made, and be considered ethnically insensitive or even borderline racist. It could be considered to be racist.
I hear that. I understand what you're saying, and obviously I'm not saying, or let me not say obviously, but let me clarify. There may be some folks out there who probably always had a problem with the term. Whenever they heard it, they said, why are you describing it that way? Whether it's someone of the same race as you, in this case with this term, or someone else. Because what someone else using the term, it now shows, because you aren't part of, it's just like how you may have a relative who you may insult all the time, right? You may call them whatever words you might want to call them, but as your friend or your family member, and you all have this way of communicating with each other. But if someone who's not within that household now comes and says, and starts to call, let's say it's your sister, starts to call her a word, the same term you use, the two of you all might watch him like, hey, whoa, that's not for you. She and I have this relationship. You aren't part of this relationship.
And that relationship, and you feel it, now that to me is slightly different, because that's a relationship of a bond shared, emotionally and so on.
Right.
So you're saying that same bond can be transferred just by genetic.
Well, I mean, as a community, we have cultural norms in our community, right?
But we have cultural norms as Trinidad.
Right. But
so then I should be able to go and to an East Indian person and call them the C word. I should say, let's call them cool runnings. I can call you, your cool runnings, because culturally that should be accepted and it should be okay.
No. But what I'm saying is,
and they can come to me and say, you're Rasta ninja, so okay, so I mean, knock a glass.
If you have a personal East Indian friend and you all share that relationship, that's fine. I have no issue with that. But what I'm saying is that we have cultural norms, that things that we understand. When we hear it, we understand what they mean and we understand what people are trying to describe. And what I'm saying is that term, when we hear it, we know what it means, and we know that what is trying to be what is being described is not necessarily what we're trying to do is identify the behavior and characterize the behavior as negative, not us as an entire race. You understand? Because, okay, for instance, just the use of the ol in front of the ninja term gives it a different connotation. You understand? So it is not just being described as ninja behavior, right?
Right.
It's being described as all ninja behavior, right? So that isn't there for a reason. And you see the semantics and the semantics of this thing. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it, but the point I want to leave you with is that culturally, we can't pretend that that is not a norm in our community. So therefore, when we hear it, we're like, oh my God, how can someone say that? Now, we could have the discussion about whether our public officials, elected or not,
that's the next question
should be engaged. Right. So we could have that discussion.
Because it's different from, it will be much different from persons at home, I wouldn't include myself, but persons at home or persons lying by a bar, sitting having a conversation, old ninja this and cool runnings that, and so on and so on and so on. I mean, that is a different conversation, and I'm hoping you all at home are with me on this.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation for elected officials.
Yes.
Persons who you put in office.
Yes.
There's a time and place and space for that type of conversation.
Correct.
And it really shouldn't be on a platform that represents a multicultural type society.
Well,
because then it says it's okay, and to me it diminishes those words, the ninja words and so on, it diminishes that.
Right.
And because it's on a national platform, there are persons who can be triggered, rightfully or wrongfully or whatever, but there can be persons who will be triggered by that. You now have a responsibility for the words that you utilize.
Correct. And we could, as I say, we could have a discussion about the general lack of decorum that exists in our political atmosphere here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And we could have the discussion about whether
under the guise of parliamentary privilege.
Yes.
I remember there was an incident with a particular minister from the Sister Isle who walked with a photo of a house and claimed that their opposite, the leader of the opposite party at the time, was a rapist, and that he would have raped somebody in this house, and he brought graphic pictures and so on, with no evidence, just a picture of the house, to me, with the specific intent to belittle and shock and awe and so on. And that type of, this incident reminds me somewhat of that, because the intent is to shock and awe. The intent is to use words that highlights what they deem to be undesirable behavior of somebody else on the opposite side.
But I think as well, you can't ignore the fact that she would have used the term because, as I was saying before, it is something that is generally culturally accepted. And
I can't agree with that. I can't agree with that.
Well, I mean, you might not accept it, but what I'm saying is that that is a term that she would have used in many circles.
Maybe rum shop talk. Maybe rum shop
talk. Right. Yeah, but what I'm saying is the reason why she felt that it was okay to use that term is because she was so comfortable using it because it has been used on so many occasions to describe that sort of behavior. I don't think it was necessary to shock or to awe. She was obviously engaging in political mudslinging, right? She wants to denigrate her opponents.
Right.
Because that wasn't the only term she used. She said she called the behavior gutter rat and all sorts of other things, right? So she was essentially trying to say, well, they're behaving in a wajang, as we might say here in Trinidad, use the term wajang, displaying wajang behavior. But she just used that other term. But the reason why that term, roll off the tongue like that was because it's not something that she would say in normal circles, and it would put people's ears up like, wow, what was that? It's not that. And I think we have to be honest about that, because if we want to get to the root of this issue, and we have to set the rules, is it that, okay, we are going to eliminate that from our vocabulary completely, and whether it's been a cultural norm in the past, we want to change that norm and completely switch it up, or is it that we want to use that, but only in our homes and in the rum shop, but not on. So we have to set the rules, but be honest about what we're talking about.
The thing for me, I think, and I can only speak for me, is that, and I'm tackling this more so purely from a psychological perspective, maybe cultural a little bit, but more so individual psychological perspective. When we, gosh, I hate the word normalize, but when we normalize woke culture lingo, when we normalize the word ninja, right?
Yes.
Which is associated with an entire diaspora, right? Anybody of a particular ethnic group and skin persuasion, particularly more so those who look like me, right? And when we normalize having, I like you.
I'm fine, yeah. Isolated something like I different in some way, but go ahead.
No, but you are the race specialist. You blended the lines, you know what I mean? You're on the border.
Right.
But when I feel as though when we normalize the acceptance of this word in a negative connotation and associate it with black persons of African descent, it reduces us somehow as a people, because it then says, when you use the word old ninja behavior, there's you understand the negative connotation that is supposed to come with that.
Right.
But the ninja word is associated purely with me and my people. It's not a word that categorizes just a behavior alone. It categorizes a people.
Right.
So I do have an issue because psychologically it links that. And when all of us could say, yeah, we understand what she means when she say old ninja behavior.
Right.
It says that we are continuously
internalizing it.
Correct. Right. We're continuously internalizing this behavior, and I've accepted that this is how all ninjas, tend to behave. Right. And it goes along with other words. I think the other words only strengthen the argument that made it more difficult for me. Things like gutter rat and the old ghetto behavior and so on and so on. So it became now synonymous. So ghetto rat and so on, and those type of those gutter behavior is now synonymous with the ninja word, Negro word, and of course she meant Negroes or people of African descent. And that is particularly the internalization of that. Right. Young persons hearing people using that on a platform will say to them that it is okay to continue using that and to continue internalizing that. And more so less the insult for me, but more so the damage it can do to a population that already seems to oftentimes hate itself.
Correct. I take your point completely. The difficulty would be that it is hard to unilaterally decide what people accept, because you'll run up against, if many times rappers have been, whenever they're cornered and asked, why do you still use the term? They find all sorts of justifications, and all sorts of communities come out in support of them. So you may think that it's not wise to try to reclaim the word. They may feel differently. So it's difficult for anybody to unilaterally decide that we as a people will now stop doing or accept or not accept certain behaviors. Generally, we have to decide and having this sort of discussion is part of that. We must have this discussion as a nation and decide whether this is the way we're going or not. I don't know. I know we have a short bit of time, but I don't know if you ever saw the skit that, or the stand-up piece that Chris Rock had done about the difference between black people and N-words.
No.
I think I would just advise you, go and
send it to me, and I'll take it.
Go and take it in. I will give you an idea of how sometimes the community internalizes that same thing that you
Yes, it's divided. Yeah. So as we close and run out of time, I don't want to say you are pro ninja and I'm against ninja. I don't want to say that.
No.
But I would say that as per usual, I think you always come with a different and a fresh view, a different stance on understanding race relations and the issues surrounding them. So I always appreciate that. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
And providing another viewpoint on it. And thank you all at home for tuning in. I wonder what your thoughts are. What did you think? Do you think did you feel offended? Did you feel as though that was ethnically motivated and racist in its core? How do you feel about that? Thank you all for tuning in today. Remember, same time, same place, next week, please God, we're going to have more interesting conversations along the same lines. Stay psyched.
WESN